I am Michael Santos with Prison Professors, and we are so excited to have on our podcast today a true superstar, somebody who really embodies everything that we strive to teach with our Straight A Guide program. He's an individual who visualized success. He put a plan together, he prioritized every day, and he executed that plan to phenomenal success, even though he started in struggle, in poverty, in the prison system. Now he is a leader of mankind, a servant leader, and I am so grateful to have none other than Titan Gilroy of Titans of CNC with us today. Titan, welcome to the Prison Professors program.
I'm excited. Thank you, Michael. That was awesome.
We are so excited to share your story with people who are either going into the prison system or people who are locked up right now. And you could just do us a big favor by starting off telling us about what it was like growing up and what decisions you made that led you eventually come into the crosshairs of the criminal justice system.
Well, I think one thing that I'll say, Michael, is that people say like you can't change, that people can't have second chances. And I'll tell you, I'm the same exact person I was back on the streets, but I'm a completely different person. And I think that maturity has a lot to do with that and making the right decisions, getting around the right people. When I was young, I came from destruction. So I came from an alcoholic father. My mother used to get beaten on a daily basis. And when the beatings came to her kids, she ended up running away, taking us to 20 different cities and states. And we ended up in Hawaii and everything. When we got there, we were going to have a place. Everything fell through. We ended up living homeless on the beach. And with this white skin, you know, that wasn't a good place to be because I grew up with a bunch of Tongans, Samoans, and Polynesians that just used to get in fights all day long, every single day, and that's how I grew up. And when you come up and you have no money, and you're coming up getting beaten, I was in a situation where either you can take the beatings and cower, or you can rise up. And one of my neighbors, who his name's Kaipo Williams, so he did time for murder. And he actually did some big things, and a lot of people were scared of him, right? But, I mean, tattoos all over his neck, you know, tattoos all over. And I used to see him, and I used to see the respect that everybody gave him, right? And I was probably 6th grade, and I didn't have a dad. I didn't have brothers or anything. And one day, after seeing me getting beaten by the other kids and stuff, he basically was like, hey, boy, come to my house, you know? And I went over there. And he basically set out a plan. He's going to train me to fight. And every day after school, I'm going to tell these kids to leave you alone. You're going to come over here. I'm going to teach you how to fight. And he started teaching me how to fight every single day, taught me how to dive and go catch fish for my family, taught me how to, like, you know, be a man in a way of like earth and living and stuff. And he became like my father. And I wanted to be like him. So I think I kind of, although we had a great relationship, to me at that time, being the biggest, being the toughest, you know, owning that street and how everybody looked at me, it mattered to me. If I was going to get into a fight, I would take it to the extreme because I wanted people to fear me, because I saw that that was how he was successful. And it took me to boxing. It took me to being the California state champion, to getting a contract with Top Rank Boxing in Las Vegas, to, you know, hanging out with Mike Tyson and Foreman and doing the whole thing. And it also took me to a nightclub where fights broke out, where I threw one punch and got 16 years in prison. And I deserved to be there because I did the wrong thing.
Tell us about the mindset that you had when you're a young guy, you're at the top of your game, and bam, everything changes. You get sucked into the criminal justice system with a 16-year sentence. What's the mindset shift going on?
Within 1 week of being in the system, I hit somebody else who hit their head on the concrete, and they took them out of the prison system, right? I walked in angry. You know, I didn't know who God was. I didn't know anything. All I knew that my beautiful mother was mistreated. I had nothing. I'd been beaten ever since I was young. Now I get my one opportunity. I go out to a club, and all of a sudden I knew that I did something wrong. But at the same time, when I walked in, I was just angry. And and it was the same thing on the streets. I was ready to prove myself and go with anybody, and that was my mentality. And as soon as I got the opportunity, I did it, and I didn't care about life. I didn't care about dying. I didn't care about a future. I had 2 kids. I was 22 years old. I had 2 kids a mile away in a house living with their grandparents, and I knew that I would never see those kids again, and my life was over. And I treated the prison system and everybody like that, like my life was over and I could really care less, you know?
There's so many people in prison today who are going inside there. They've lost hope. And when they lose hope, they begin spiraling in a downward way. And that's why I think it's so important to bring people onto the program while they're in their jail cells. They can be learning about what steps can I take today to position myself for success. And you've achieved success on a monumental level. It didn't happen easily, but after you got out of prison, you know, how did you get into that path?
Well, let me tell you a little bit about prison.
Yeah, walk us through.
Something happened in prison, right? So I'd always been about the boys. I'd always been about, you know, a lot of the fights. I wasn't necessarily a bad person, but I'd get into these crazy situations and I'd get arrested and I'd just be in the jail system and, you know, boys' homes and all that. But a lot of it was actually protecting my friends and stuff, right? So all of a sudden, you know, when I'm always around them, that's one thing. And even boxing, everybody's like, you're great, you're great, you're great. So if somebody tells you you're not great, you got to prove yourself, right? And I'm 22 years old. But what happened when I hit that person going into jail is I was in pretrial. So until I went to Halava prison in Hawaii to maximum security, they put me in solitary confinement for basically 6 months, right? We had overcrowding like every jail. So I had a person in there. He ended up committing suicide while I was in there, died at my feet while I'm like laying, you know, there's only one bunk. We're in like a single cell. He basically died at my feet, and it didn't totally like trip me out, but it made me think like just raw, you know, like just why is life so horrible, you know? But then I ended up spending 6 months in this cell by myself. I read my first book in this cell. I spent so much time that by the time I pled no contest to the charges, got sentenced, went to Halava maximum security prison, I wasn't that angry kid anymore. I actually was just like, okay, now there's a minimum sentence that I have to perform. I didn't have all my times getting arrested was when I was a kid. So I had a minimum. I set a goal that I'm going to get out. I'm going to fight, and I'm going to do what needs to happen to actually get out of this prison system. And I started working the program. I got into my art, right? So I'm in manufacturing now. It's all art. So I used to do cards for the other inmates so they could send them to their wives. I traded for food, you know, and I started teaching boxing to all the different inmates and stuff. There was a gym with some heavy bags and stuff. And you start living life in there, you know what I mean? But I started doing the right thing.
You know, it's easy to live life if we find some meaning in it. Wherever we are, we can always find a way to live productively and live positively. And when we do that, that sometimes can lessen some of the pains of confinement. That certainly happened for me, where every day, instead of focusing on calendar pages turning, I was just focusing on how am I going to come back to society? And that made all the difference for me. When you got out of prison, Titan, tell us a little bit about the experiences you had.
Well, one thing that happened when I was in prison is I qualified when I got to maximum to medium to minimum security, right? I qualified for a pine line, and the pine line was a pineapple picking work line. And it was the hardest job that I ever had, where basically for a whole year I picked pineapples following this boom across this field with other inmates and stuff. And they took a year off my sentence. Top Rank actually sent a letter and said they were going to give me a contract to actually fight again. So when I came out, I was just like, I'm going to fight, I'm going to box, and this is my one opportunity to make it. And I flew to Vegas. I started training with the heavyweight champion of the world, started doing the deal like I did before. It was almost like I had never even gone to prison, you know, except I had fear now because I didn't want to get into trouble. And I just started like rolling. But you got to understand, I'm a boxer, so the aggression is something that's good, and I'm not that humble on the streets when it comes to boxing and stuff. So it was just kind of it was hard for me to try to live a life that's humble and to stay out of prison and also be who I needed to be in boxing to actually go up those ranks and make it happen, right? And during that whole process, I won my last fight by knockout. And, you know, I had an altercation actually changed my life. And would you like me to say a
Yeah,
little bit
I
about
would
that?
love to hear it.
Yeah, so it's funny because once it happened, I started looking at my life and looking at the people that actually came into my life and affected me and opened the doors to the destruction that would happen. Not saying I'm guilty of walking through those doors always, but it really started making me focus like, whoa, life is a trip, right? I was training every day. I would wake up at like 4:30 in the morning. I'd meet my trainer at UNLV at the track, and we'd go out there and run. The night before one of my times, I had this guy playing like Barry White at like probably 2 in the morning, just booming. My neighbors just booming my doors and stuff. And I basically, I didn't know really what to do. I don't want to get into an altercation. I never even met him, never talked to him, didn't know him. But I put a note and just asked him if he if he could turn his music down in the morning hours, and if he needed help with his truck or something, let me know. I wanted to be a good neighbor. And that led to literally 2 weeks of him threatening my life, threatening people in the complex, threatening everybody. And then all of a sudden, after beating his girl and beating his dog and 15 cops coming to the facility, I walked into the parking lot. He chased me down. I basically hit him. He hit his head on the concrete again. And basically, they arrested me, put me in the car, and took him away. And, later on, the whole complex came to my defense and talked about how I was being threatened. And the cops let me go and put me in my house and looked at my boxing trophies and made jokes about how I guess that guy's not going to want to box with you again. And it was like my manager was like, we can fix it. I was like, I don't need to fix it. We're good. I'm not in trouble. But at that time, something hit me and I had no other options. I had no other hope, but I knew I was not going to hit anybody again. I was done. The very next day, I packed up my car. I packed up all that I had. I moved to Sunnyvale, California. I looked in the newspaper for a job, and I got a job for $9 an hour at a machine shop, not even knowing what it was. And it changed, again, that altercation changed the course of my life and took me to where I am today.
One of the lessons that we teach in our program is how important it is to have the right attitude, and we define that attitude with 100% commitment to success. What we just heard Titan tell us is really validate that. He made a decision, I'm never going to be brought back into the criminal justice system. He was able to recognize there are some risks associated with violence and said, I'm just going to turn my head from that. Made 100% commitment, and that 100% commitment started with what? A minimum wage job, $9 an hour, didn't know anything, willing to start at the bottom. But at the end of the day, that commitment, that change is what resulted in him becoming Titans of CNC. It is what ultimately resulted in him influencing hundreds of thousands of people around the world. It is ultimately what resulted in him creating jobs for hundreds of people and creating value for America. That's why he's such an inspiration to us. And that's why I'm so glad that we're going to continue listening to this amazing story of what has become Titans of CNC. So you start off, Titan, as a $9 an hour employee, not knowing anything about machinery, never having worked in even the industry or the vertical or anything about it. How do you progress from there?
Well, let me, I tell people, you get me excited, like, boom, yeah. But, I think in life, I have a lot of, now I'm involved with the prison system, and I have a lot of friends in there, friends that are doing life and doing different things. And these are my friends. I talk to the mothers, send me emails, the sisters, and you know, I always see it as we always react off of our surroundings, off of our personal experiences, you know? So, you know, there's a lot of things that we just don't know and we've never experienced, and we're just not in the right place to actually take advantage of that door opening. We don't actually give ourselves the ability to have that key to walk in because we're reacting off negative things and stuff. That's what I did my whole life. And then all of a sudden I walked through the door at $9 an hour. And mind you, I have something like $40,000 in arrears in child support because I got this bill when I got out of prison, right? Which is reality. I have 2 kids in Hawaii. I left Hawaii and actually went to Vegas because I felt that was the only way I could actually support them. So $9 an hour is not going to cut it. But I walked in and basically saw these CNC machines. I'd never seen anything like it. It's a big robotic machine that costs $100,000 on a small scale. And basically it moves and it cuts metal. So they're mills and lathes that are run by computers. First time I was on a computer was actually doing desktop publishing in prison. I took a class. So basically they put me on these machines, and because I was an artist, and because I was good with math, I got F's in everything else, but I got an A in math and I got an A in art. I basically jumped on this thing, fell in love with it, and all of a sudden, you know, my aggressiveness from the streets, my fearlessness allowed me to learn from everybody and then look into the machine and have the guts to actually push it. And why do I say have the guts? Because this is $100,000 machine that is your life savings, and people are timid by it. But the faster you run it, the faster you can make products, and the faster you make products, the cheaper the products are when you sell them. Therefore, never mind my prison, I actually started running the things fast. I used my creative skills to figure out how to run more parts, run them fast, more efficient. I started making the boss money, and literally went from $9 an hour to $28 an hour in a matter of 2 years. And guess what? I paid my own rent. I got my own car. I paid my child support. And one of the most important things is I had something to lose. I had hope because I had a job that I loved. And then all of a sudden I had attained things in life. My parole officer was still visiting me like every week, every other week. And slowly those visits, you know, lengthened and stuff. But all of a sudden I had something that I didn't want to lose. I started just making the right decisions. And before you knew it, I could honestly look at myself and say, I'm a good man. Like, I'm treat people good. I'm helping guys in the shop. I'm doing this. And then my boss made me the foreman of the entire place. And that's how I started my career.
So Titan makes it sound easy, but I know it wasn't easy. And I know it takes enormous commitment. And that's really what's important for somebody who's starting at the bottom. And if you're in prison, we're at the bottom. That's what you've got to realize, is that it's not going to be easy, and it's not going to deliver success with happy talk. You got to do it. And I know, because I've read the story of Titan, that he didn't only work the $9 an hour, 40-hour shifts. When his shift ended, he was volunteering overtime. When it wasn't getting paid for it, he was learning on his own. I'd love for you to talk a little bit more, Titan, about the enormous commitment it took on a personal level to become the best in the world at what you do. And that's what you are. And that's why you're a great teacher, because you did it. You didn't talk about it. You did it. Tell us about that commitment and what it took.
I think when you come from where I come from, you're willing to put the work in, put the time in. And from the moment I walked in, I wanted to, I asked for the books. I asked for the work. I was fascinated. When we were going through, we'd have different jobs and stuff. I would literally go home. My boss would tell me to stay home, and I would come back and work all night and basically put in 20-hour days because I wanted to get the work done. I wanted to deliver parts, and that built up a trust with my boss. And trust me, like, that was a very abbreviated, you know, during those 2 years, but coming from prison to running a shop and actually making a living for yourself, I had to do everything everybody has to do. I had to explain myself to people. I had to hold myself back. When you're a fighter And when I was a kid, basically a 20-year-old, if somebody disrespected me, I hit first. And that was just my mentality. And that helped elevate my brand, if you will, for fighting and stuff. So all of a sudden I'm trying to be good. People don't know where I come from, and they can disrespect me if I go out to the wrong place or go to dinner or something, or cut somebody off. And it took a lot of like time for me not to react quick, not to say something and put somebody in their place. And so I grew as a man, I grew as in work, and I ended up getting married. I ended up like growing and figuring out how to actually just not be so demanding that everything's my way, and realize that relationships are a two-way street. And that's not, when you're in prison, that's not what when you're in prison, you're coming out, you're getting everything you have is because you got it, right? You went after it, and nobody's doing you huge favors and stuff. So it's a mentality I really had to, it took me a long time. And I think after a while of doing that, I ended up going to church. Did I believe in God? Did I believe in any of it? I didn't, but I started thinking to myself, all these houses have beautiful cars next to them. All these houses have this. All these people they go to church and they do this. They all have these lives. If I'm around them because I have bad thoughts in my head, and I have no remorse. Having no remorse, meaning like I can see people die and it doesn't bother me. People can cry their eyes out in front of me. It doesn't bother me, unless it like is affecting me personally. Like, just being real, like that thing in me started bothering me. And I started going to church. I went to church for 2 years. I didn't believe in the Lord because I couldn't wrap it, my head around it. And all of a sudden, I ended up having these things happen in my life. I gave my life to Him, and He gave me purpose. And then basically, I just been running hardcore ever since that day, probably 18 years ago. And now I've gone back into prison. I have a TV show on Monday nights. I teach kids and go to schools all over the country, and I have an academy I've built inside San Quentin prison. It's now in like 170 countries. And it's because of Him, and it's because I stepped on that path and didn't allow those strings where people could pull those strings to get me off course. I clipped them and constantly looked at my surroundings and you know what I'm saying, right? You know what I mean? Like, I understand what can pull me down, and I understand that I have this amazing journey, and I'm blessed to be on this journey, and this is the vision. And I understand that if I go to the wrong place, if I drink the beer, it'll lead to two. If I put myself in this situation, I need to stop putting myself in those situations. I need to stop leaving those loose strings so that I don't give people opportunities to pull me off the track, because we're going to rise to greatness and make it happen. And boom, let's do it.
Boom. And that's what we're hearing. And that's exactly what we're striving to present and project in the Straight A Guide program. There's a component of our program that talks about awareness. Anybody could have went to that metal shop at $9 an hour and had the same path that Titan has had. But Titan was on a path. That's what he told us. I wanted to read the books. I wanted to learn. I observed what's going on around me. What are successful people doing? He starts to model those successful people. And then what happens? People start to believe in him. He doesn't only become aware of opportunities. His foreman says, hey, I'm going to make you a manager. You've got leadership potential. He goes to church. New opportunities come his way. Why? Because the world's becoming aware of him. He believes in himself. It makes it easier for other people to believe in him. And it doesn't matter if you're in a jail cell, if you're in a high security penitentiary, if you just got out, if you're just going in. It doesn't matter when you start sowing these seeds. If you start sowing these seeds, your plant is going to start to grow. You're going to start bearing fruit, and you're going to eat from it from the rest of your life. That's a biblical passage. That's not our words. That's not Titan words. That's right from the Bible. And you've seen it for 2,500 years. You're going to see it in your life if you begin following the leadership that Titan is teaching us today. Now, Titan, I know that after those couple of years, you became a manager and a leader, and then it came to the point, I think it was in 1995, that you decided to start your own path, and that embodies, that furthers the message of somebody believed in you. They believed in you so much that they signed a big note, even though you were a convicted felon, even though you went to prison for a violent crime. Somebody guaranteed a big note for you. They believed in you that much. Talk with us a little bit about starting your business and the capital that it took to get started.
I think that, so it was 2005.
Okay.
So when I was in prison in 2005. So I was in prison in 95. So it was 2005 that actually happened. So 10 years later, I would start my own company. But what had happened at the first company, I worked there for 4 years. I ended up raising as high as I could. When I left that company, because I just wanted to get out of the Bay Area, I wanted to be around trees, and I moved up towards Sacramento. I basically, my boss offered to help buy me a house. That's how much he loved me. That's how much I put into his company. And I settled for a toolbox, a $1,000 toolbox he put in the back of my truck when I left. And I went on a journey. I went through all these big companies. I got jobs, and it didn't work out. I got cheated by people who I made millions of dollars for, and they basically went against contracts, and what I felt is that they had cheated me. I went through these years right there, probably 5 years of building other people's companies, of making other people money, always having a promise, and it always falling short. And I basically just struggled and struggled. And one day, when I finally had enough and I had no money in my pocket because I was paying $1,500 child support, my child support had gone up, and basically just trying to make a living, I basically made a decision to go out on my own. A lot of people now I had a reputation in the industry for making people money, solving problems, for making we make rocket parts that go onto a rocket that goes to space, right? We do crazy components out of titanium and different things. And it's not just something you can send to China. It takes an artist. It takes somebody who understands the metal and the cutting tools to actually shape that part. And I had a reputation in that. And basically I set out to start my own company, and every single door that I opened closed. And then a gentleman that worked for me on my night shift of my last company, both his parents had passed away. They left him $50,000 to his name. His hands were going, his eyes were going. He used to own his own shop that had failed because it was a manual shop. He came to me and said, Titan, I could invest this, but I could do this. I'm going to lose it no matter what. You're the only thing that I trust. I'm going to actually invest my $50,000 in you. And I said, Jeff, his name's Jeff. I said, Jeff, I'm not going to take your money. I'm not going to do it. I kept knocking on doors. Nothing happened. I went back. I said, if you give me the $50,000, I'll triple your money in 2 years. He gave it to me. I spent it like that. He refinanced his house, almost got divorced over it because his wife had never even met me. And she's like, you're basically ruining our lives. Took $75,000 out. Boom, gave me $125,000. I spent it like that. And today I gave him $620,000 back. So he gave me $125. I gave him $625, and he lives in Texas, and his new house he bought from that investment. And he's a good friend of mine. I see him online all the time. Boom! Yeah.
So awesome. And then what Titan did when he said he spent the money, what he didn't reveal is he wasn't out buying a new Camaro, and drinking. He was spending that money, investing that money in America, making jobs for other people, making equipment that makes America awesome and employs more people. That's what leadership is about. And then he started teaching other people how to do the same thing. He spoke about going into San Quentin, and we're going to get there. But I'd like you to tell us a little bit about how your business grew. I mean, you started with virtually nothing but a solid, massive amount of courage, a commitment, a discipline. People believed in you. You built a business. First year revenues, boom. What are they, Titan?
Well, when you did the boom a second ago, I literally got chills. I want to share something, and this is not about me. And this is not something you're going to read in a magazine or a newspaper article or see on the show. But one day, going back to Jeff, I don't want to say his last name, but going back to Jeff, one day he bought his house. He had done different things. It's his entire retirement. I knew it wasn't going to get him to the end, right? And he didn't ask me. He didn't say anything. And one day I called him. I talked to my wife and I called him. I said, Jeff, now that basically that's all done, I'm going to give you $2,000 every month until the day you die. No paper, no nothing. I'm going to do that to the day you die. Why am I saying that? Because I was in prison, because I was on the streets, because I had gotten the worst that this entire world has thrown at me. I watched my mom starve. I starved. I went through all of it. I went through prison. I went through having no hope and thinking life was over. And all of a sudden, here's this guy. People can talk about giving me money, but here's this guy that dedicates and gives me his entire life savings to start my company. And I wanted him to know that it wasn't about a contract, that he's my family. And as long as he knows it, because of what he did and how he did it, like, we are going to be bonded forever, like, period. He doesn't share my faith. It doesn't even matter. But what he did changed my life. And having an opportunity set me on course that from the moment I started my company, I wanted to help people. I saw that the way the economy was and the way things were, like, I wanted to, like, teach people. I work, many of you guys probably don't know a lot about CNC machining because people don't talk about it, because our work has been taken away, because we're fighting over scraps, right? And everybody, all these shops like mine are in confined boxes. They don't communicate with other people because they're competing, and their know-how is their ability to make money and make a car payment, right? So they don't share that information. And I saw that all these companies were running at 30% of their capabilities. And basically, you know, nobody was promoting American manufacturing, right? So I set off on course to actually make a difference, to do things. I made $1 million in the products that we were making. I made $1 million my first year, 2 million my second, 6 million my third, and basically by the time I was in my fourth, I was making $1 million per month, and we were rolling. Yes.
Boom.
Boom.
The cool thing about it is we're talking a man who came from homelessness, prison, struggle, and built something that is just really contributing. He's providing jobs to people. He's paying taxes that are going to fund schools and road building and hospitals. He is the American dream, and it is what we should all aspire to become. What's really also awesome is Titan's commitment to giving back. One of the components of our Straight A Guide program is appreciation. Express our gratitude for the blessings that have come our way. And we do that by giving other people this opportunity, this knowledge, this pathway to success. And he's built this school, this amazing school that brings chills to my mind, that hundreds of thousands of people can learn about concepts of computerized numerical, it's a computer numerical controlled machine.
Yeah.
And he's teaching people how to use it live on these videos that I can watch on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Facebook. He is committed. Tell our audience about how many people have gone through your program, Titan.
Can I say one thing first?
You can say anything, man. You are the boss.
When I just said I was rolling, something happened everybody started telling me I was so great, so good, like I was when I was boxing. You know, I looked out on my floor, 55 employees. I used to struggle with guys in prison and like with my boys, and now I have 55 families that I'm responsible for. Something happened. There was this crazy thing is in '08 and '09, the economy collapsed, and I was making all these ROV, remote operated vehicle parts, for 200 ships that were being built in the Netherlands. The ROVs were US made, and they were made out of, all the cameras and stuff were out of titanium. So basically I had this massive contract. I just expanded, and basically in one single day, that $1 million a month left me. My ability to pay those guys left me. I went through a year of laying off 40 employees, the hardest thing I ever did. And coming out of that, jumping into working for SpaceX and Blue Origin and all the aerospace work that I do now, that is what triggered me to say, you know what, these people losing their companies is not good enough. This skills gap, and nobody's teaching our kids, is not good enough. We're giving $800 billion worth of trade to other countries while our inmates are in prison not learning anything, and they're coming out not able to support their families, and that's not right. We need to bring that work back. We need to train these guys so they can actually do something and take care of their families and cut that chain of destruction and walk forward in positivity and make it happen. And that's what we started doing. We started doing I created a TV show. And basically, all of a sudden, the state of California, after my second season, came and asked me for my help. That there was 5 prison machine shops in California, and they were run like hobby shops. The guys couldn't actually come out and actually make good money because they were running manual machines, which I love. But now it's a CNC world. And basically, California asked me for my help. I walked into the prison system. I actually went to San Quentin prison and built the most elite school, volunteered my time, energy, money, and we filmed this thing and basically built this amazing school in San Quentin prison. And during the process, I realized the USA, the greatest country in the history of the world, basically had, and the industry that built America, there's no standard, there's no curriculum. If you want to be a doctor, banker, or lawyer, you can go to college. But if you want to be a CNC machinist, you got to learn it on the job because there's no curriculum that's going to teach you. So when I was teaching the inmates, the men at San Quentin prison, I decided to build my own curriculum for the prison system, and to that later on, I put it online for all teachers in all schools. And that's what we did. So right now, as I sit here, men, there's 30 men in the class, Titans of CNC at San Quentin prison, and they're making parts on CNC machines. And across this nation, there's schools that are running the Titans of CNC program. Online, we have 30,000 students. We have 1,600 teachers. I'm meeting with the governor and the congressman, and they're making this thing like go just be the national standard. And nobody's asking me about that I used to be in prison. They're looking at education and looking at what I'm doing, not judging me on my past. And that's just because that's how I handle myself. We're making it happen. Boom.
But I got to ask you, because you left one key component out of this amazing contribution that you're making to America and the world, because I know this is in 130 countries.
170 countries.
Now give them the real gold. How much are you charging each student to go through your program?
Yep, it's 100% free.
What? I mean, that is contribution. He is now working with the governor, and this takes courage. It takes courage to take anybody that's like us, who has a felony background, a criminal background, went through prison for serious crimes, to believe in us. I've written about my story and all the people that have believed in me. I've only been out of jail for 4 years, got $3 million worth of products in place. Why? Because just like him, people believed in me, and people will believe in you. But the reality is, it takes a lot of courage from people like Governor Brown, Director Secretary of Prisons Scott Kernan, Dr. Brant Choate, Al Rivas, Shannon Swain, all of these leaders that bring people like Titan in, because it is the voice of the formerly incarcerated that can most effectively inspire the people who are incarcerated. And
Yeah.
I'm so grateful to you for that.
Let me say something. Life is about solving problems. So not only, so the curriculum's free, but why is it free? Because I'm not money hungry. If I'm going to create something, if I'm going to put a piece of artwork on the wall, I want as many people to see it as possible. People keep telling me to charge for the curriculum, which is up online, but instead of having this much people on it, I want this many people. And because I had the TV show, I basically went to the biggest companies in manufacturing, sold them on my ability to basically create a education system that actually works, that's going to support our industry. So I actually use sponsorships from tooling companies to help fund it so we can give free education. But that's a problem that nobody's ever done that I had to think about. Doesn't matter that I was in prison. It's a real problem, and now we're making it happen. Do I have all the money I want? Do I have everything? No, I walk on eggshells. I walk a fine line. I risk everything because my belief is so solid right there, right? So free is free, but nothing in the world is free. You have to figure out the problems and solve those problems and do it. And that gift that you have, that's what makes you different if you can do that.
That's visualize the best possible outcome of success, put a plan in place, prioritize. You got to hit priorities first, and then you execute the plan every single day. That's what the Straight A Guide is about. That's what Titan Gilroy is about, Titans of CNC. If you haven't had an opportunity to see it because you may be in prison, I encourage you that when you come home, you do your research on it just like I have, and you will find a roadmap to success. It is an amazing story on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn. This is an individual who truly gives back, and he spent 45 minutes, half an hour more than half an hour with us, and I'm just so grateful to you for spending the time. We've come to the end. I want to say, do you got any last words for our audience?
I was gonna say, I went back in San Quentin prison. I went back into San Quentin prison and walking through and going through the scanners and doing all the different things. That was an experience for me. This was real life for me and stuff. And today, I look at my entire journey, and although I'm not proud that I hurt people, I truly understand that everything I went through in life is what qualified me to go back into San Quentin prison. For the guards, for the warden, for all of them to say they've never seen these guys sit in silence for an hour and listen to somebody. Why would they sit in silence and listen to me? Because I am qualified, because I've sat where they've sat. Michael, you've sat where they've sat, right? Because of our experiences that was a negative, now with my faith, God has turned it into a positive. He has anointed it, and now I can go in and touch lives. One thing I would say to anybody out there, your life is not over. It's all about you. You have to make the decisions. There's negative and there's positive. You have to shut the negative down. Doesn't matter if you had a bad day. You got to shut it down. You got to go to the positive. You got to walk on that positive path. If you have negative friends, you have negative influences, it doesn't matter about relations. You have to separate yourself so that you can actually do something in your life. You can take care of your wife, your kids. You can have a wife. Today I have a beautiful wife. I have 5 children. I've got a beautiful house and I got a great life, and I put the time in because I understand how far I've come, right? It doesn't mean that you turn your backs on your friends. You just need to get away so you can become that person that can be a positive influence in their lives and pull them out, and understand that everybody has a path. They all are at different levels, and you can do it. You can make it happen. So it's all about you making those decisions, rising up, rising to greatness. It starts right now.
We'll make it happen. You got to be 100% authentic. That's what we've seen in Titan Gilroy. That's what we've seen in every episode. He gives 100% commitment. That's what we're asking from you. We're so grateful to you, Titan, for sharing your inspiring story with all of us. And we will work hard to prove worthy of this time that you've given to spread your message in places where people don't have access to the web and can't see your amazing story.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Thank you very much. I am Michael. On behalf of my partners, Sean Hopwood and Justin Paperny with Prison Professors, we are so grateful to have Titan Gilroy with us. If you want more information on how we help, visit prisonprofessors.com or text the word Prison Pro to 44222. We'll be back tomorrow with another inspiring guest.